Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. This is the #1 daily radio show for realtors looking for a no BS, authentic, real-time coaching experience. What's really working in today's market, how to generate more leads, make more money, and have more time for what you love in your life. And now your hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
Welcome back, and of course, happy holidays and merriest of Merry Christmases. It is kind of funny, Julie, broadcasting live from Puerto Rico where it's 75 or 80 degrees outside.
I know. We have to remember that it is the holiday season in spite of our beautiful weather here.
Yeah, being from the Midwest, the lack of snow and cold weather and not around the Christmas season doesn't really, I can't connect those
things. It's confusing.
I have to remind myself.
Me too.
So listeners, we are going to be doing the podcast live for a couple days this week, and then we're going to be doing a series of our best of podcasts, the ones that were most downloaded in 2023, based on obviously the podcast analytics. And some of these podcasts that we're going to be replaying are going to be podcasts that had like 20,000, 30,000 downloads. So yeah, the market has said these are great shows, so please do consider listening over the holidays. And it is not too late, a quick reminder, it's not too late for you to get a copy of our Harris Rules book. It is the perfect stocking stuffer for, well, yourself, but also for any of the other real estate people in your life. And of course, Harris Rules is available everywhere. Online and offline bookstores. It's one of the best-selling real estate books in history. Now, I want to do another quick announcement, and then we're going to get to our content today, which is how to have massive momentum, alliteration, Julie, in 2024. So what we're going to be doing on that is we're going to give you guys, I think, a lot of things that will help you position your mind and your emotions to being receptive to how to really launch into 2024 with a lot of energy and enthusiasm. But I want to let all of you know that this podcast this year has had one of its best years in all the years we've been doing this podcast ever. Well over 3 million downloads, and I don't even remember how many streams, but a lot. And the podcast has really, I think, exceeded a lot of our original expectations for it. I don't even remember, honestly, when we first started doing it. Mm-hmm. It's probably been 10 years.
I think so, too. It's over, isn't it over 5,000 episodes?
It's more like 7,000 episodes.
Yeah. Wow.
When we move from one host to another, they wouldn't let us import more than 2,000 shows. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they're out there somewhere.
Floating around,
right.
Yes.
But in any event, yes. So thank you for keeping this the #1 list to daily podcast for real estate professionals in all the United States. And I think slowly we're creeping into other markets as well, which is great. And in 2024, we are planning on expanding the podcast in the form of doing occasional interviews with, frankly, podcast listeners, but also with some of the top producing agents that are part of our coaching program. So we're going to be doing a lot to help motivate and educate you guys and keep you in action through 2024. And the last big announcement I have is Julie and I are working on, and I think we're going to pull it off too. Mm-hmm. I'd say right now, I am 50-50 sure we're going to pull it off.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
No. So
okay, I didn't
do
think
tell.
So. A huge national tour schedule.
Oh, yes. Now I do.
Now, it's going to be something where there'll be a local host, and we'll help organize it. We'll help promote it, the whole thing. And we'll share more with you. We're trying to finalize the details with a company that's going to help us organize all of it. But we're planning on doing dozens of live events. And the real goal, frankly, is to do 100 live events every single quarter. And maybe in the first quarter, we'll be doing a live event near you. Now, Julie and I won't be going to these events personally, but our hosts, our hand-selected hosts, will be running the events. And the events will be focused on education, specifically, obviously, the favorite topic of every real estate agent, lead generation.
Yes, indeed.
Right. So we're going to be talking about lead generation, and so along those lines, we'll look for the announcements about the live events coming soon to probably a podcast or email widget near you. Now, there was, and again, we're going to get to our topic, but there is something that crept up last week that Julie and I haven't talked about on this podcast, and I would say it was only sort of on our radar, but now it's really on our radar, and it should be on all of your radars as well. No, it's not the commission sharing lawsuits. Nope. There's actually something even more onerous that essentially has made it past the radars of a lot of real estate folks. It is soon going to be impossible, let's just call it as it is, to buy buyer leads. And I'm going to be very specific on what I mean by that because I just overstated it. What's going to happen is right now, if you're a consumer, and I'm sure all of you have done this before, and you go to, say, for example, Zillow's website. Now, Zillow doesn't necessarily operate like this anymore because they started having what's it called?
Flex.
Yeah, Flex and different programs. But if you are a consumer and you fill out a form on a website, and then the lead, it's essentially a lead generation website, and then that lead is then sold to many different people, or in your case, many different agents, and then that consumer is inundated with messaging and calling. Again, I'm sure all of you have experienced something like that. Julie made the mistake years ago of being suckered into some lander with regards to rental properties or something. And to this day, we're getting texts and emails and everything because that information gets sold and resold and resold. And if this goes to the fact that a lot of the bot buyer leads are pretty much the worst quality buyer leads, and I think you guys understand why. Because the simple fact is they're being sold to a million different agents. Now that is going to be changed. The FTC has passed a rule. It is part of the what's a text thing? You remember those 4 letters?
TCPA?
Thank you. Very good. The TCPA. It's going to fall under the guise of the TCPA. And so the way it's going to work is when you go to a website or a consumer goes to a website and they listen to what I'm saying, listeners, and they fill out a form, that if the consumer then has to consent to who specifically the website will be sharing the information with. So I want you to imagine a consumer going to some sort of real estate lead, aggregator basically, that's designed to essentially capture consumer information and sell those leads back to agents. And then the consumer says, yes, I want more information about, this house. And then in the past, the company then sold that lead to, as many different agents that were silly enough to buy the lead. Now in the future, the consumer is going to say, yes, I want more information on the house. And then as the law is written, as the guideline is written, there will be another pop-up that says, which of these agents do you want us to share your information or your request with? And there's going to be, in many cases, what? Can you imagine what a mess that'll be? Most consumers are going to go, I'm not choosing.
Or if they do, who will they choose? Most likely the listing agent.
Right. If the listing agent is denoted
if they
in the
even
pull-down.
show up, right?
Right. So Julie and I have been rallying against buying buyer leads since 2008. We've been saying that buying buyer leads is one of the biggest acts of futility an agent can have, because the fact is, if you focus all your best energies on being a listing agent and you do really the very minimum to market the property, you will frankly, in this past market and even in this current market, you'd have to beat the buyers off the stick. I mean, just have one listing. If you've never experienced that before,
and do a killer open house. That'll help.
Open house,
follow our
for sale
systems.
sign, obviously, right? You do all the things we teach in
things.
Premier Coaching. You will have so many buyer leads. You won't, and yet agents weren't listening. They were buying buyer leads. And Julie and I, we coined the phrase, don't build a mansion on land you don't own. The whole thing the premise of that was, do not build your business around things you cannot control, with specifically focusing on the buying of buyer leads.
That's right. And for those of you who are wondering about this, to your point, Tim, we've been saying this forever, right?
Forever.
Because it's bad for you financially. It's bad for business momentum. It's bad in many different ways. Now, the difference now is it's going to be illegal and bad for you.
I'm not
the
sure.
The TCPA stands for Telephone
Consumer
Protection Act. So that is a real thing that I believe these new rules are going to fall under. And so now you're going to maybe not even get that lead in the first place. If the lead selling business continues, they will be more expensive and fewer to be had.
Well, there'll be one-on-one relationships.
Yes.
So in other words, the lead selling companies that are out there, and there are droves of them. A lot of them don't appear as essentially selling buyer leads, but that's what all of them are. For example, Zillow makes their money from selling buyer leads, but if you ask anybody on the street what Zillow does, they'll think it's like, essentially a
like an MLS kind of.
Exactly. That's what they actually think.
Well, and think about all of the mortgage ways that buyer leads get sold too, right? So there's somebody that, maybe they went to your open house, they like the house, now they're going to go look into mortgages. What are the rates? You go to any of those, what are today's interest rates? And there's droves of those mortgage companies or mortgage lead aggregators, right? Where you just want to get kind of quasi pre-qualified. What's the purchase price? You type all that stuff in. And in order to get your quote back, you have to give them your email address, your phone number, and all of that. Well, now you've just become a lead.
Well, exactly. And in the past, like we said before, that company would grab that information, all the forms you filled out, and then it would sell your lead, that information, to as many different people that would buy it. And, that is how it worked. Now the consumer is going to fill out the form, give the information, and then have to indicate, not just a little BS check here box saying, yes, I consent to my information being shared with a bunch of different whomevers. They're going to have to actually directly indicate by name, this is how we read it, who they're going, the consumer chooses to share their information with. And if there's 20 different agents, you know as well as I do, how's that consumer even going to choose? They probably aren't. But more importantly, what is this? If I'm a vendor and I'm selling leads to agents and their buyer leads, you are going to have to figure out how to retool your business model. As we read it, and we listened to a couple podcasts about this, the one on what was it?
Housing Wire.
Housing Wire. They did an awesome job.
Yes.
So the way we understood it was what's going to happen is the lead selling widgets now are only going to be one-on-one relationships, which means that these companies that sell leads are going to be out of business because they're not going to have enough customers. But that is where it's going to evolve to. Now, how is this relevant if you have your own website? Well, assuming you're gathering the lead and then you or your staff are working that lead and you're not selling that lead to some, third-party agent, you're fine. Don't worry about it. Again,
you have the relationship.
We're not attorneys and we don't completely understand all of it, but that is how we understand it. Yeah, you are, that is your lead you have generated. And again, why have Julie and I always said build your business based on listings? Because we saw all of these things coming. I remember very clearly when Zillow went public, or essentially started selling buyer leads in 2008, 2007, somewhere in that era. They were selling leads and it was essentially a potluck dinner for a lot of real estate agents. But we knew it was going to happen. Everyone knew it was going to happen, right?
Well, we've been seeing it happen. The leads have gotten worse quality, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. So originally they were just selling the leads, and then everyone knew that they're going to start charging referral fees. Everyone knew they were going to start doing the things that they said that they weren't going to do, and sure enough, that's exactly what they've done. And now when you buy buyer leads, it's going to be a 40%. And do not assume that the referral fee is going to stay at 40%. Of course, it's going to become 50 or 60%.
Or a flat fee. It could cost you $1,000 a lead.
But that's the very business model that's not going to be in existence anymore unless it's a one-on-one type relationship. But even the leads companies that are selling the one-on-one leads, as we understand, that will be the only way they're going to be able to sell leads. Those are going to be very fat referral fees. Thus, the conclusion that leads are going to go through the roof as far as costs. So be aware of all this. That's the summary of what we understood and how we read it.
That's right. And also be aware this will be a changing thing because I believe, if I recall correctly, it's going to really go into effect. I think we've got about a 6-month runway.
Yeah.
So look for more news on this. We will let you know any specific changes, how this evolves, what's going to change in terms of from the consumer standpoint, the lead seller standpoint, and the agent standpoint. So how does this relate to our topic today? Well, we're talking about planning for next year.
I do want to say this too, Julie, because it's important. Because if you're listening and you're a lead buying agent and you don't know what else to do and you're scared shitless based on what you just heard,
right?
I would say that's an appropriate reaction to this news if you don't know how to generate leads any other way. But I want you to remember one thing, listeners. There is zero reason to believe that 2024 is not going to be the start of a long-term boom market in real estate for all the reasons that Julie and I presented on our predictions podcast a couple Fridays ago. Go and listen. So the wind, more than any other time, and certainly maybe the last 3 or 4 years, is meaningfully at your back. Even more so, I'll say, than the
pandemic?
Not the pandemic, because then they had super low rates. That was something that was unheard of. Even from the 2009 to say, the run up that happened for about 10 years, right? There'll be even more focus on people buying and selling real estate. You are in the right place at the right time, but you're going to have to retool your essentially what you know, and most importantly, what you do. So leading into today's podcast, we are talking today about specifically how to have massive momentum in 2024.
All right. And where can they find the notes? Because there's a lot of questions involved here.
Thank you for reminding me. Yes, the notes from today's podcast, unless they get clipped, sometimes they get clipped by iTunes, are down below. So all you've got to do is open up the show description, and then you can read along with us and use these notes, of course, when you're presenting to your team or your brokerage. Also, the notes in their entirety are over on our main website, timandjulieharris.com. So if you want to see all the notes unedited, that's where they are, timandjulieharris.com. So, Julie, how do these guys build massive momentum into 2024?
All right. I think we're going to have 10 points. We may or may not get to all of them, but you've got the notes. So starting with number 1, and most of these are questions. Number 1, you're sitting on the beach at the end of this year. What 3 things are you most proud of? What are the 3 things, excuse me, and also what are the 3 things you'll be most proud of a year from now?
So the premise is right now, we're all sitting on a beach here in Puerto Rico, And Julie and I asked you the question, but we did this at dinner with some friends the other night too. It was fun. What are the 3 things that you're most proud of having accomplished in the last 12 months? Hopefully it's hard for you to come up with the 3 things because there's way more than 3 things you're most proud of. You can even change it to 5, but 3 seems to be a number that everyone can wrap their mind around. So what are the 3 things that you're most proud of? And then the second, when you come up with those things, and this is, again, to get your brain working towards the idea of setting really meaningful goals, then the next question is going to be, a year from now, what are the things that when we ask you the same question, maybe we're sitting on the same beach in the same place, what is it that you are most proud of having accomplished leading into 2025 that you did in 2024? You guys get it? And really, you should choose what your highlights reel will actually be. The 3 things, the 5 things that are the most important, and they have to be very, very specific things. Julie?
Yes, that's right. Okay, so moving on to number 2, what are your goals in 5 most important parts of life? And you can certainly refer to your real estate treasure map. We talk about that all the time on the podcast for a deep dive into goal setting. But right now, write down the 5 most important areas of life. We do this with all of our coaching clients all of the time. Those 5 things are family, financial, physical, mental or spiritual, and educational. So what are your goals? And you're not going to have an equal number of goals in each of those categories. Maybe for you, financial does seem to be the easiest one to conquer because it is very definitive, paying something off, saving X number of dollars. You call it putting steaks in the freezer. That can be very definitive. Now, physical, some of you, that is going to be just one major goal. You're going to say work out 5 days a week and be very succinct about that.
Notice what she's saying with the word succinct. A goal is a dream with an action plan. So what a lot of people do is they make the mistake of just writing down a bunch of things. It's sort of like a word salad of things that they want to accomplish. Here are my goals. Here are my, this is what I'm going to do. But there's no action plan. And an action plan also has to include a done date. And by the way, family, financial, physical, mental, spiritual, educational, you don't have to have goals under all those categories. You don't. Like Julie and I were starting to work on this ourselves, and we are asking each other these questions. And fortunately, a lot of our answers are the same. But which is, by the way, do this with your spouse, partner, loved ones, and make sure everyone's kind of rowing in the same direction as far as what the goals are for 2024. But when I got to spiritual, I hadn't really focused on anything spiritual in 2024, and neither did you.
Sure.
So that's okay. But we had focused on some of the other things which we were really proud of having accomplished. And if you guys follow us on Instagram, you'll know that the hardest thing that we did this year was definitely going to the gym, doing kettlebells, which we still have to do today.
Exactly.
And we kept a journal on Instagram of every day we went.
Well, that's right. And so you're not going to have an equal number. Some things you might not have any specific goals in, but you do want to consider these 5 categories. And to just make it not so much a dream or, as you said, a word salad, goals have to be SMART. This is an easy way to make sure that you are doing this the right way. SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. And of course, posted where you can see them daily in order to work. So I'll give you an example. I'm considering, and I'm saying this publicly because I know, for example, Chris Leon, who is a Duolingo partner. He's in the top, I think, 4% for practicing Duolingo more than 1,000 days in a row.
Okay, but hold on.
Yeah.
You do or don't know that Chris Leon actually fluently spoke Spanish prior to starting
Not as
Duolingo.
fluent as you think. He's becoming actually fluent. And I think probably by now, being 1,000 days in a row is probably pretty damn close. But the thing that I like about Duolingo is it tracks everything you do. It gives you a report every day. It gives you reminders so that you can actually be committed to it. So I'm thinking about committing a little educational piece to doing that because that's going to benefit me. We live in Puerto Rico. Zoe's going to be bilingual. She's going to have little Hispanic boyfriends at some point.
Ew,
I need to be speaking Spanish. But
no boyfriends for Zoe, Julie.
Not for at least 10 years.
She's 10.
I know.
Don't even say.
I'm getting ready.
Don't even say boyfriends.
Yeah.
And by the way,
but the point is that it's specific and measurable.
I'm all for you learning it too. That way I don't have to learn Spanish as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if you and Zoe learn it really well, you guys will just be my, ask Zoe or ask Julie, right?
Yeah. So financial, a dream would be, I got to save more money. Everybody says that. No agent has ever said, I want to spend more. It's, I want to save more, but that's just a dream. How much? Well, maybe you start with, how much does it cost you to run your business and your family times a 6-month reserve? And that will equal an amount of money. Maybe that's $50,000, right? That's measurable. It's attainable.
And you
and
said
timely.
you also, to point number 2, all of this is in the Real Estate Treasure Map, which you get when you join Premier Coaching. Real Estate Treasure Map is really your go-to life and business plan. It's not a lightweight business plan or life plan, really. It's, frankly, 63 pages. So make sure you get a ream of paper, print it all out, and take the time to actually complete it. This is the perfect time of year to go through that mental and oftentimes emotional exercise so you can exorcise any of your bad thinking before you go into the new year. Point number 2 or 3, rather.
Number 3, I love this question. If you weren't afraid of failure, what would you change about your goals? So where does that go? Are you setting easy goals, or are you setting stretch goals that will require more work but garner better results? So how would your goals change if you weren't actually afraid of failure? Are you playing small, or are you stretching?
That is a great question. I actually remember when you and I wrote this outline now.
Yep,
We wrote
me
this
too.
like a month ago because I remember that question in particular. That is a fantastic. I mean, where's your mind go with that?
Well, of course, I go to coaching calls because, that's part of it.
I'm asking you personally. If
Oh,
you weren't
personally?
afraid, if you weren't, don't worry, Julie. Nobody's listening. It's only probably like 15,000 people.
I don't know. I have to think about that personally. What would I don't know. I'm going to have to digest that.
If you weren't afraid of failure, what would you change about your goals? That's awesome. I love it.
You know what? I'd probably do something more in the ocean. I'd probably, because we watch kite surfers all the time. We watch surfers all the time. What are those foil board? I don't even know what it is, right? But I think I do have a fear of being either eaten by something or cracking my head on coral. So if I lost that fear, I'd probably do some kind of water sport.
Of course, you do know that we live in the number 1 kite surfing or number 2 kite surfing place in the world.
Yes.
Yeah. And you do also know that more people are killed every year by mosquitoes than there are sharks.
See, I know these facts. You're facting me. But that goes to the point, right? If you lost that fear, what would you do? I'd probably have to go to water sports. How about you?
I'm not afraid.
You don't really have this problem.
I don't know. I don't, honestly. I'll tell you what my fear is. Truthfully, my fear is that I set. Look, you and I did do this every year, and we set a lot of what we thought were lofty goals in 2023, and we accomplished all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So my fear is, at my age, is allowing myself to become complacent in any way. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes to my own detriment, usually to my own detriment, I have a tendency to set things like, I'm thinking about swinging the 100-pound kettlebell today. Mm-hmm. That's probably dumb.
Possibly. Well, too soon to tell.
But I want to get myself, so that's my biggest fear, truthfully. And you know this. You've been married to me for 32 years. Yeah. Complacency, yeah. Complacency to me is like, it just, ugh.
It's kryptonite.
I just don't even want to talk about it, honestly. Because if you become complacent with regards to finances, you lose your financial security. Health, you lose your health.
Sure.
Relationships, you lose your relationships.
And it doesn't take long.
And it's so easy, not just at any age, to be lulled into complacency. Mm-hmm. Oh, I got it figured out. I've lost weight. I'm in great shape. I don't need to exercise anymore.
I got a $40,000 closing coming up, so I'll be okay for a while.
Exactly.
Well, that's fine. That was a really kick-ass month, but maybe that turns into your year.
But
No.
if we're being totally honest, Julie, with us financially at this point in our lives, where we are, it's easy for us to become complacent.
Sure.
Because frankly, we don't really have to work anymore.
Right.
And we haven't had to for a while. And it's easy to allow myself to. It's not. I can't even say it.
Well, so I'll bring you back to the treasure map, right? Because one of the products of the treasure map is after you do this process that we're walking them lightly through, because we can't do the whole treasure map on a podcast, is that in the end you will have a daily ideal schedule that is reflective of those goals. So even though we would be fine if we never did a podcast ever again in our lives, right? But how do we keep motivated and actually do that and do it hopefully at the highest level possible? It's because we have it in the schedule. It's because we have a calendar saying what we're going to do, because we record at the same time of day most of the time. That's what happens when you have goals.
Well,
right?
for example, I'll tell you something. Live events, those are always basically grenades with a pin pulled.
Agreed.
Weather's bad, people don't show up, something happens.
Lots of logistics.
There's lots of logistics. So one of the things I definitely have a fear of is live events, because there's so many different ways they can fail. But I've already committed to doing dozens of live events next year.
That's the accountability piece.
Right. Well, exactly. And so if you're saying, this is what I'm saying, though, I look for personally, it's from coaching agents. It's from coaching over 100,000 coaching calls. Is how my brain's wired now. Mm-hmm. But I actually seek out and ask myself, What am I afraid of? And then that's where I put my focus. What am I the most afraid of? Okay, I'm going to write that down. I'm going to think about it. I'm not going to analyze why I'm afraid of it, all this other time wasting crap. I'm going to work against that fear, because 99% of the time, the most meaningful, really the most amazing things are on the other side of acknowledging the fears and pushing through them.
Very well put. Absolutely. So point number 4, are you willing to be consciously incompetent to move your business and life forward to the next level? Remember the 4 stages of mastery. We mention it now and then on different podcasts. 4 stages of mastery for pretty much anything. Unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence, and unconscious competence. I know that all kind of sounds the same thing, so you can find the notes. But to become more competent, you must first accept and embrace the second stage, which is called conscious incompetence. You know that there's stuff that you don't know and that you've got to get better at. And that's where great coaching is going to help you. And I have to point out that you're not at the same stage in everything. So if you take real estate, for example, most of you listening are pretty competent working with buyers, but maybe you've got to embrace becoming a better, more competitive listing agent so that you can lead with listings, which is a better mental, physical, emotional, and financial lifestyle. Then you've got to say, you know what, I'm willing to be consciously incompetent. I'm going to polish that pre-listing package. I'm going to learn some objection handlers, but I have to accept that I've got to go through that stage.
Well, it's the question you and I ask when we do live events, right? So we'll say, what are the things in real estate with regards to lead generation you absolutely will never do, right?
Right.
Ask yourself, dear listener, that very question. What are the things in real estate for the sake of lead generation that you'll absolutely never do? Write those things down. They're probably the same things for all of you, but write them down. And then ask yourself, what would happen if you were to do those things? And I'll say, for example, I remember being, so many times we've asked this question in front of, groups of agents, and the answer, none of them want to raise their hand, but you start picking on people in the audience, the ones that look like they actually are paying attention. And it's always the same damn thing. They're never going to call, for example, a for sale by owner.
They'll say, I'm not going to cold call.
Exactly. Yeah. And then frankly, we say, then what will you do? Well, I'm a centers of influence past client. I'm going to do direct mail. I'm going to do all these other things. Okay. Then I'll ask this question. Why is it that you're doing those things in hopes of earning what? Why are you working your centers of influence and doing the direct mail and doing the TikTok videos and doing all this passive stuff? What are you actually hoping to generate from all that activity? Well, I want to generate a transaction. Well, specifically, what type of transaction? Usually they'll say a buyer or seller, to which I'll say, well, if you had to choose which would it be, what would it be? And they'll say a listing. Okay, so you're doing all this marketing, all this advertising, all this speculative spending, and this burning of your life energy in anticipation of hoping, praying that you're going to get a listing lead. Is that correct? And they'll say yes. Well, do you realize, and this is, I remember very specifically when we did this when we were in Iowa, actually, you and I had driven past 3 or 4 for sale by owners on the way to the
right.
country club where we were doing this event. And there were like for sale sign in the yard with a phone number, right? That means all the agents in that room had to have driven past those same damn FSBO signs.
Absolutely. And a really nice neighborhood, by the way.
Yeah, it was a country club. Yeah. In Iowa, which still is a nice country club. So they were driving past the same signs we were. We knew they were there. We asked them the question in this room. Basically none of them were willing to admit that they are trying to avoid the most is actually calling them. Now, here's the insanity of all. All right, so then we're back at the live event. I say, well, do you realize that as you were driving up the long driveway to get to this beautiful country club, you passed 3 for sale by owner signs? Those are sellers who are saying, I want to sell my house. Here is my phone number. Please call me. Okay. And yet, Mr. Agent, you want to spend all your time doing all this passive stuff, hoping and praying somebody calls you. So if your real goal is to generate a listing lead, why the hell don't you call that for sale by owner? Because you're afraid to, because you don't know how to, because you don't know what to say. And then we get into the coaching of basically what to say and how to say it and the psychology around it. But the reality of it is that some of you are ignoring where your best opportunity in life and real estate specifically is. It's on the other side of everything you're fearful of, and it's okay being consciously incompetent. In other words, you need to admit, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I need help, because that is where you actually are going to start feeling a massive wave of, the word that popped to my mind was joy, because you're realizing how much more potential you have.
And that you can do that. You can push through that. But I think that everything that you pointed out, 100%. But I think some of this goes back to everyone's desire or belief that they can skip that stage. So you ask the question, why do you do all this passive stuff? And agents will say, well, if I can just get 1% to respond out of 2,000, leads, emails, texts, whatever I'm doing that I'm paying for, impressions, yada, yada. Well, that 1%, I just need more numbers. I'm going to work the odds versus realizing that when you call 3 for sale by owners, you've got 100% basically qualified leads. They've got a sign in their yard. They're handing you their phone number. You can even see the house right in front of you. That's the difference. You can't skip unconscious incompetence and just get straight to momentum.
How did Tim and Julie sell over 100 homes, including pendings, by the way? Our first year in real estate, doing exactly what we just told you. We made for sale by owners our bread and butter.
You couldn't buy a lead if you wanted to back then.
No, you couldn't. And you get referrals, sure. Yeah, but reload and whatnot. But yeah, and so a lot of those for sale by owners that were selling their first homes were, guess what, becoming buyers. That's the reason that 50% of our transactions in the first year were sellers and 50% were buyers. You can do the same thing. Write down what you're fearful of, get on the other side of it, embrace the excitement of being consciously incompetent, knowing that after you've said, you know what, damn it, Tim and Julie are right, I gotta go after the for sale by owners. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to start paying attention to how many they are, and then your brains are going to start thinking about how good it'll feel to help all those people. And of course, you're going to start adding up how much potential commission you can make off the sales and having been involved in that transaction. But it's way more potential than that. Your sign in that yard with the sold sign writer on your sign is going to get more sellers calling you. Wash, rinse, repeat forever.
And how many of those do you really need, considering the average commission is right around 10 grand these days, right? So you've got the first one from the for sale by owner that you list. You've got their buy side, probably. You might sell it yourself, possibly. You've got all the leads that come off of your open houses and all of your prospecting around it. So, follow the plan.
You can join Premier Coaching to learn how to follow the plan and actually know what to do and how to do it. It's free. You can join Premier Coaching for free. Scroll down, click the link to join, or you could just go to premiercoaching.com. We talk about Premier Coaching constantly, and we celebrate the wins of all of our Premier Coaching clients. Become a winner in 2024. Scroll down, click the link to join for free, or just go to premiercoaching.com. Point number 5, Julie Harris.
Number 5, are you truly willing to do what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at a high level so that you can succeed at a high level? What are you avoiding the most in your real estate practice? What are you avoiding the most in your life? The hardest things are also the most effective things, and this is why it's called work. Vacation is something different. But what are you avoiding? What's the saying? Whatever you resist persists.
Yep.
So that's related to our previous discussion. Most of this does go back to lead generation.
And, when you said in your life, obviously we're not life coaches and we're not going to get woo-woo or life coachy ever. But it is interesting that if you feel like you're lacking something in your personal relationships and how your friends and your family and the rest of it, and you're not getting the love, the appreciation, all of those types of things, if you're just feeling like really kind of like, underappreciated, just stick with that word. Here's a little, dare I say, hack to that. Give away what you want. In other words, if you're wanting more love, if you're wanting more appreciation, if you want more hugs, in the kitchen yesterday, Zoe came up and gave me a big hug first thing in the morning.
It was awesome.
It was like, okay, this is nice. Let's do this every day.
Let's do this.
And why did she do that? Because she wanted me to pick her up and give her a hug, and I did. And I held her for like a minute. And that is completely what she wanted. But she intuitively knew that, I want Dad to hug me, so I'm going to give him a hug.
Yes.
Right? But in life, if you want more compliments, give more compliments. If you want more appreciation, show more appreciation. That's essentially the magnetic pole that you can create for yourself. And that is a loop that never ends, provided you stay in essentially stay in the momentum of being an appreciation and overtly showing that to other people. You'll get that radiating back at you at such a level of intensity you won't believe it. Point number 6.
Yes, and we did a whole, a 2-day podcast series about gratitude. So if that is of interest, make sure you go back to listen to that. Okay, number 6, are comfort and complacency more important to you than discomfort and progress? Related questions all under point number 6. Have you ever noticed that people who are in good shape are also doing well in business? I notice that a lot with coaching clients.
And by the way, also true in other aspects of their lives.
Yes.
All the 5 categories of life. It's
a discipline, basically.
Well, it's because the balance, right? Now you do have people that are basically gym rats that look amazing that are broke. I mean, that is
that's true because they're at the gym 100% of their time.
Exactly. Well, that is a thing, right?
It is.
Or you have people that are super rich but have terrible health. But really, the people that all of us want to be more like are the people that have things that are in check. And Julie?
Okay, so for example, what are you already disciplined at and how did you get that way? That is a major topic on coaching calls sometimes when agents are struggling with that discipline. If you can bring them back to what have you already been successful at or what are you right now successful at and what has caused that? And it always goes back to, well, I've got to get better at making my calls, for example. Well, what were you good at previously? Maybe it was a sport. I'm a nationally ranked what have you, okay? How did that happen? Practice, coaching, repetition, study. Real estate's exactly the same. Stop making it so different.
But you're touching on something else too. A lot of times agents are better at things, are good at things, but they've gotten so consciously competent about it, they don't even realize they're good at it.
They take it for granted.
They take it for granted. Yeah. And so when you come to us, really any coach should operate like this. But when you come to us and you are coached by, one of our coaches or even maybe Julia or myself, one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to look for what you're really good at. And we're going to make you not just good at it, but the world's best at that. And if there's other things you really suck at, guess what? We probably will never deal with those things. Because really in real estate, the only things you really have to get very good at are lead generating, pre-qualifying, presenting, and negotiating. And really, I'll even go back to say, if you can lead generate and you can pre-qualify and you can present, you're going to win.
That's it. Because everything else kind of takes care of itself.
It does.
Yes. Or you can hire a TC to help you. Okay, so if you have never been disciplined about anything, it's time to get and follow the real estate treasure map and be supported in your goals by joining Premier Coaching. It's okay if real estate is the first thing that you find discipline. That's all right. Point number 7, what would it feel like to emotionally connect to your goals? Sorry, you have to talk.
And how do you feel when you're engaged with your goals? And that's something that's an interesting, I think this is a connection between your conscious and your subconscious, or maybe even this allows you to have I don't even know how I want to express it, but like if you, for example, are wanting to, I don't know, let me pick something. Okay, you've always wanted to walk to the top of the Eiffel Tower. That's something that we're going to do with Zoe in June of next year. We're going to go to Europe for a month, and we're going to take Zoe's going to a school over there for a month, and one of the things we've always promised Zoe, and we've even created a little song about it. It sounds like a nursery rhyme about walking up the Eiffel Tower with Zoe, because it's something we've always wanted to do. I get emotional thinking about it because I've thought about it with such levels of intensity for so long. I mean, I'm going to hold Zoe's little hand and we're going to walk the million steps to get to the top of the Eiffel Tower. Knowing Zoe, she's a chatterbox, but I bet because she's going to be so enthralled with actually being present with the experience that she's going to just be totally watching and paying attention, making sure that mama's okay, the whole thing.
But you're emotionally connected to that, right?
And I, frankly, Julie, she's going to wear a little, I even have visualization what she's going to wear, okay? No. She's going to wear a little red beret. Okay, she's going to wear a little dress. She's a little person, so it's going to be little what she's going to wear. Exactly, right? And we're going to, okay, so I am emotionally attached. I can feel the emotions of actually doing it. I can feel her little hand in my hand as we walk to the top of the Eiffel Tower. I can smell the smells this week. I'm smelling baguettes and croissants the whole way up, basically. Yes. Yeah. And so that. Now, if you're wanting to know what it feels like to say, for example, maybe some of you, I remember when Julie and I started selling real estate, one of our goals is we were less than poor. Dirt was basically wealthier than we are when we started selling real estate. But one of my goals was by the time I was 30, I wanted to buy, guess what? A Ferrari. And it took me till I was 31. But one of the things I would do, and I would actually visualize and allow myself to feel what I thought it would feel like to have a Ferrari, to drive a Ferrari. Now, the Ferrari was essentially just a carrot, a rabbit to chase. It was something that was going to keep me motivated, that was a hard goal to accomplish. By the way, I've used that same system for my entire life to keep myself motivated, specifically with cars.
It works.
And you guys can have other things that you create. Sometimes it's experience. Most of you are going to be a lot more sane than me, frankly. So you're going to make it so it's going to be around travel or, experiences and all those great things. But whatever it is, the way to make a goal real is to emotionally hardwire it into your brain what it would feel like to accomplish the goal. What would it feel like to be 20 pounds lighter and having people look at you and compliment your looks? What would it feel like to be able to, wear that dress or wear that suit? That you guys get it? What would it feel like to fly in first class and never even think about flying in coach again? What would it feel like? That's the question you have to start with, but don't stop there. Actually work on, maybe even meditate on, putting yourself in the emotional state of having accomplished the goal. Now, I'll tell you something else that's counterintuitive. That's not one of Julie's notes, but it is interesting. Oddly enough, sharing your goals with other people lessens the likelihood of you accomplishing them. I've read this, and
I know. It doesn't even matter really why, but I've read it too,
Exactly.
and it is a fact. I think it probably has to do with, some people, you're kind of inviting their take on it or their criticism, or you're opening yourself up to has somebody else layering their thought on top of you. If it's really truly your goal and it's important to you, you don't need to share it with anybody.
Either they talk you out of it or they pre-celebrate you accomplishing it.
That too.
So you have the emotional release of having accomplished it.
Like losing weight, right? I want to lose 20 pounds. Oh, Tim, you don't need to do that. You look great.
Exactly.
And there went your goal. Poof.
Right. Oh, okay. Or you know what? I want to, sell 100 houses this year. Well, that'll be fantastic. Blah, 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 blah. And then you pre-celebrate it, and all of a sudden, that goal that would have driven you has become a little bit less, and maybe even a lot less powerful to you emotionally. Mm-hmm. So oddly enough, share your goals with basically no one. Your spouse or your partner or your coach. Yeah. Nobody else should know about your goals. And you guys should experiment with that right now if you don't understand the psychology of it. What is a goal that you don't want to share with anybody? And that's the goal you should be chasing. The goals that you're willing to share with other people, have you noticed? They're the ones that are going to be, frankly, the least important to you, because you're willing to share them because you know you won't be judged by what you say. Like, I didn't tell anybody when I was in my 20s wanting to, figure out how to buy this Ferrari from selling real estate. I didn't tell anybody about that goal because I didn't want them to, shit on my goal, frankly. Julie and I were super poor. What the hell? Why would I have the right to be anticipating buying a Ferrari when I was 30? I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even tell my dad. I told nobody.
You told me, but
I told Julie. Yeah, obviously. But anyway, so there you go.
Yes. Okay. So number 8, are you willing to own both your success and temporary failure? Are you a blame taker or a blame thrower? How would your life change if you owned everything that happened to you? We often talk about adopting the mantra, it's too soon to tell, right? Something, you perceive to be terrible to happen, but really it's too soon to tell. Maybe that happens so that something better can happen. But are you willing to own it is the question.
The way to encapsulate that is assume that everything good and bad is because of, is your fault. And I know that's an overcorrection, right? On the side of accountability, but it's also a great psychological threshold that you need to make sure you don't cross. For example, and I give this example on the pod, and if you are right now going to Starbucks, maybe you're in the parking lot of Starbucks and you're listening to us now, and you're parked there, you're perfectly in your parking spot, you're not doing anything wrong, you're jamming out with the pod, you're loving your Starbucks, whatever, and all of a sudden someone pulls into you. Now, everyone on planet Earth, even not on planet Earth, would say it wasn't your fault, it was the person who pulled into you's fault. The law would say that. The witnesses would say that. Everyone's going, your dash cam is going to videotape this nincompoop pulling into you. Their fault completely, right? But you now have allowed yourself to be a victim because now you've been victimized by the other driver's car. And now you're in a mental state that makes you, frankly, weak. So instead of, and again, I know this is an overcorrection, but it's a good mindset approach. Instead of saying, I was a victim or I had a car accident or somebody hit me, say, yeah, somebody did hit me, but, in all reality, I know that I chose to be in that spot at that particular time, getting this particular cup of coffee. Yep. I put myself here for this bad thing to happen. Now, again, I realize that's overcorrection, but it is a litmus test to how much you or how easily you fall into the victim role, because the victim never wins. You're always going to be making excuses. I didn't take that listing because Bob cut his commission, or I'm not going to take that listing because they don't like my age, or they don't like whatever. You're always going to be looking for reasons to fail.
Yeah. So in other words, own it either way and have some self-accountability, and everything will go better ultimately. All right. Number 9. Are you consciously curating what goes into your eyes and ears so that what comes out of your mouth is what you wish? Are you more positive or more negative? What's causing either one? I was listening to a podcast the other day where they're doing a 90-day non-complaint challenge. Could you not complain about a single thing for 90 days? I thought that was a great idea.
Dude, how do we get Zoe to, come on now.
Right?
Can I ask that for Christmas? Zoe, give Dad I won't even ask for 90 days. That's unreasonable.
How about a week?
Right.
Or a
so
day.
You think, you know what? Why don't we do that? Why don't we see if she
idea.
cannot complain for a week?
I think we could have a family contest. We all have to participate.
Okay.
Oh, now game on.
Yeah, but what?
Can you complain about them not complaining? Or complaining?
Can you complain
I don't
about
know.
the lack of? I'm not comfortable in this house because I don't hear any complaining.
Exactly. It's too quiet. Would your friends, prospects, and clients say that you are positive and professional, or do you sometimes feel ghosted? Do you lead with productivity or procrastination? I always think back to two people in my previous life with this non-complain idea, or are you leading with being negative or positive? Back when we were in college, there's a lady named Judy Bergen that worked at the same store. She I never heard her complain about anything.
Hold on. Julie just dropped a little interesting pearl there. I want to go back and visit
We
it.
didn't have to grab onto that one.
Well, it is seasonal though.
True.
So Julie, in high school, worked at
college,
partially in college, worked in a year-round Christmas store.
Yes.
Okay, so she would work in this Christmas store and selling some unbelievably beautiful,
Collectible
ornaments from Poland and all these other things. So Julie was an elf. And
full-time elf.
a full-time elf, and it took years after she stopped working there for all the little sparklies from the ornaments, the glitter, to actually wash off of her. I mean, it would be everywhere, and it wouldn't go away in the laundry, and it would just essentially, we were walking around looking glittery all the time because she was a full-time elf.
In the middle of the summer.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. But that was because I mentioned Judy, and she was, I think when I was working there, she's probably 60 something. She had a family, she had things I'm sure going on. But never a complaint and never a bad word about anybody, to the point where it was noticeable. The other person was my mom's mom, my grandma, and never. I mean, I'm sure she had health things, lived to almost 100, never complained about anything. Not the weather, not how she felt, not about other people. It just was not in her ethos.
Julie's grandma's first name, I think this is interesting, is Minnie. It was Minnie. And that was not her nickname. That was her actual name, Minnie.
Yep.
And she was actually Minnie in real life. She was very short.
It's like 4'9" or 10.
How they
like
would have known that when she was born. I mean, granted, she
don't
could
know.
have been a small kid that could have grown, but they named her Minnie right out of the gates.
Exactly.
That's
See,
funny.
that's absolutely. But you remember people like that, and I admire that. So something to consider. And our final question today, who is helping you get on track and stay on track? Are you surrounded by support, or do you feel like you're going it alone? And how can you change that? Of course, you have coaching with us. That would be the easy button, to be surrounded by people who do care about you and your business and your goals as you put forth in the Real Estate Treasure Map. So homework are, what 3 things will you do immediately to take control of your future?
Start with the beginning of today's podcast notes and work your way down. Have the Real Estate Treasure Map in your hand that you've gotten free because you've joined Premier Coaching, and actually go through and do this exercise. It will be liberating. If you're feeling worked up, scared, if you're paying too much attention to the bad, negative news, if you're worried about the commission sharing lawsuits and the buyer agent this and the this, that, the other thing, you need to give yourself an opportunity to hit hard reset. That's the blessing of this time of year.
Yes.
But you have to give it to yourself. You have to hit the hard reset. And it goes against a lot of our grains the way we're wired to not work, but work doing something that's going to be more about working on your business versus working in your business, and get your Real Estate Treasure Map. You urgently have to do that. Now, I got some good news, bad news for you listeners. The bad news is you have once again forgotten to get Julie and I anything for Christmas. Okay?
It's not too late, though.
It's not too late. We have given you something every single day this year. This podcast, you've given us nothing. But here's the good news. We're going to make it easy for you to make that up. Go to iTunes, give us a 5-star review, and say why you like today's podcast or any of the previous podcasts. It's easy. It takes like less than a minute, and it's free. Okay?
Exactly.
So please do give us a 5-star review on iTunes. In the meantime, guys, we're going to do one more live show tomorrow, and then after that, we're going to be running our best ofs for the rest of the year. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. You are in the right place at the right time. Get ready for your best year ever in 2024. Have a fantastic day. We'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.